Welcome to Crafting Better ApostropheCMS Editor Experiences, a series to help developers craft intuitive ApostropheCMS sites that provide a great user experience for content creators. Content editors already have enough to remember: headlines, deadlines, brand voice, SEO. Why make them memorize hex codes too? We're going to transform scattered color management into a centralized brand color system that makes your clients happy and reduces your support tickets. Why this matters. Content editors need quick access to approved brand colors without memorizing hex codes or risking off-brand color choices. Every time they have to guess a color or ask for the right blue, that's friction in their workflow and potential for brand inconsistency. By creating a centralized color configuration, you ensure brand consistency across all color fields while making future brand updates simple and reliable. This is made easier through the use of the ApostropheCMS color picker swatches that allow for preset colors for the editor to choose from. Here are the core principles we'll follow. Centralize once, use everywhere. All brand colors can be defined in just one file. Make it editor-friendly. Present colors as clickable swatches, not hex codes. Filter by context. Show only relevant colors for specific use cases. Future-proof updates. When brand colors change, editors automatically get the updated options. No need to manually update each field. In general, if you aren't using a CSS framework like Tailwind, we recommend using CSS custom properties, also known as CSS variables, as a single source of truth for all your brand colors. What I'm doing here is defining our complete brand color palette in our main style sheet using CSS variables. I'm setting up variables for our primary brand color, our secondary supporting color, our accent color that we use for calls to action, and then I'm also including semantic colors for success states, warnings, and error messages. Notice how I'm naming these variables. I'm not using generic names like color1 or blue. Instead, I'm using semantic names that clearly communicate the purpose of each color. Brand primary for our main brand color, brand secondary for supporting elements, and then semantic names like brand success, brand warning, and brand error that immediately tell you when and why you would use each color. This semantic naming approach is crucial because it makes your CSS variables self-documenting. When a content editor sees brand success in a color picker, or when a developer encounters it in code 6 months from now, the purpose is immediately clear. No guessing, no referring back to documentation. The variable name itself provides guidance about what the color is for. What's cool about this approach is that these CSS variables become our authoritative, canonical color definitions for the entire project. Here's the magic. When we change a value here in this CSS file, it instantly and automatically updates everywhere that color is used throughout the entire site, in the choices available to editors and existing content that's already been created and published. This is fundamentally different from other approaches where you'd have to manually hunt down and update each instance of a color. Next, I need to create a shared configuration file that makes these CSS variables available to our ApostropheCMS color fields. This becomes the bridge between our CSS definitions and our CMS interface. I'm creating a simple array that exports all of our brand color variable names. Now here's an important detail that trips up a lot of developers. Notice that I'm using just the variable names themselves like -- brand primary without wrapping them in the CSS var function. That's because the ApostropheCMS color field is smart enough to handle that CSS function wrapper internally, so we just need to provide the clean variable names. This configuration file becomes incredibly useful because I can import it into any module, any widget, any piece type, anywhere I need brand colors. And I'm always referencing the same central list. Now, a critical point about maintenance. Once your site launches and you have content using these CSS variables, you should really avoid changing variable names. Here's why. If ApostropheCMS stores a color value in a document as -- brand choice 1, and then you rename that CSS variable to -- brand primary, all those existing documents become invalid. The stored value no longer matches any available CSS variable, and so the color breaks. You'd need to write a database migration to update every single document that references the old variable name. That's a lot of work and risk just to change a name. The smarter approach is to get your variable names right during development and stick with them after launch. Adding new brand colors is straightforward and safe. Just define a new CSS variable and add it to this array. But renaming existing variables after you have content, that's a data migration project you just really want to avoid. Now comes the fun part, applying this brand color system to our actual content schemas. I'm importing my brand color configuration and then applying it to any color field where I want editors to have access to the preset brand swatches. The key here is the preset colors option. When I set this to my brand colors array, ApostropheCMS automatically generates beautiful color swatches in the color picker interface for each of these brand colors. When a content editor opens the color picker now, instead of being confronted with a confusing color spectrum and having to guess at hex codes, they get these preset swatches for all our brand colors. No more guessing, no more approximating, no more brand inconsistency. The editing experience becomes delightful instead of frustrating. Here's where we need to be thoughtful about our implementation. Our templates need to gracefully handle both CSS variables that come from our preset swatches and any custom colors that editors might occasionally choose. This is important because while we want to encourage brand consistency, we don't want to completely restrict creative flexibility. I'm creating a simple macro that checks whether the saved color value starts with 2 dashes, which indicates it's a CSS variable, and then wraps it in the appropriate CSS function. If it's a custom color like a hex code or an RGB value, it passes through unchanged. Now I can use this macro throughout my templates with complete confidence, whether an editor chooses one of our preset brand colors or picked a custom color for a special situation, the template handles it correctly and renders the appropriate CSS. Now here's where this approach really demonstrates its power and why CSS variables are such a great approach. Watch what happens when I simulate a brand update by changing our brand colors. Look at the transformation. Existing elements across our site that use our brand colors have updated instantly and automatically. Content editors don't need to go back and manually update anything. Plus, moving forward, editors are presented with these new brand colors in their pickers automatically. The marketing team can implement a brand refresh, and the entire site reflects the new colors immediately. This is the power of CSS variables as a single source of truth. As your project grows and becomes more sophisticated, you'll often want to provide contextual color choices rather than showing every brand color for every situation. This is where the filtering capabilities of our centralized system really shine. For example, when I'm building a status indicator component, I probably only want to show colors that make sense for status communication, like our success green, warning yellow, and error red. I can filter my brand colors array to only include those relevant options, which keeps the interface clean and focused for content editors. Look at how much cleaner and more intuitive this makes the editing experience. Instead of overwhelming editors with 6 or 8 color choices where only 3 make semantic sense, they get exactly the right options for the context they're working in. This reduces cognitive load and eliminates the possibility of accidentally choosing inappropriate colors for their status indicators. Now, whether you're using CSS variables like we are today, or if you prefer working with hex codes directly, the key technical requirement is the same. Your filtering must return an array of string values that ApostropheCMS can use as preset colors. And there are definitely situations where you might need to use static hex codes instead of CSS variables, like when you're generating email templates, integrating with third-party tools that need actual color values, or working in environments where CSS variables aren't supported. If you're using a more structured approach with semantic tokens, objects that pair names with values, you'll need to map those back to the color values before passing them to the preset color options. You can see more about this in the written documentation that accompanies this video. For organizations that need strict brand compliance, maybe you're working with a large corporation that has very tight brand guidelines, you can take this system even further by completely disabling custom color options. By setting options like Disable Spectrum to True, I can remove the color spectrum picker entirely. I can also disable transparency controls and hex code input fields. This leaves only our approved brand color swatches available to content editors. Now editors can only choose from pre-approved brand colors. There's literally no way for them to accidentally pick an off-brand color or create inconsistencies. This is perfect for maintaining absolute brand consistency across large teams or in situations where brand compliance is critical for business or legal reasons. The beauty of this approach is that you can implement different levels of restriction for different content types or user roles, giving you fine-grained control over brand compliance while still maintaining a great editing experience. ApostropheCMS allows you to take this even further. The ApostropheCMS palette extension, which is part of the Pro license, lets content managers adjust brand colors site-wide. Here's the clever part. By mixing CSS variables with fixed colors in our brand palette, editors get swatches for the palette managed colors right in their color fields. You can see here in our palette configuration, we end up adding a field for each of our primary, secondary, and accent brand colors that use the root as the selector and set a CSS variable. Here in our palette editor modal, we set those variables to red, green, and blue. Now, when we open up our widget color picker, we can see that the palette colors have been added to the swatches, and when we set them, it shows they are set to the CSS variables. Now, if we open our palette editor modal and change the colors, they update in our widget. I have, of course, altered my template to set these colors from the CSS variables. So we have developer-defined structure, but content manager flexibility. The editor changes the hex code in the palette once, but then can select those same colors without having to remember the hex code to apply to any element by simply clicking on the color picker swatches. So, what are the key takeaways and business value? This approach delivers instant visual recognition, so editors see color swatches, not technical codes. 0 support tickets about brand colors, they're built right into the interface. Context-aware color choices, the developer can filter palettes to show only the relevant options. Brand consistency at scale, there's one source of truth for all color decisions. Future-proof updates, change the central file, this updates every color field instantly. And a professional client experience, they see you've anticipated their workflow needs. This isn't just about convenience, it's about removing cognitive load so editors can focus on creating great content instead of remembering technical details. When your CMS feels intuitive, everyone wins. If you like this content, please click the subscribe button for more in this series.